Okay, so today we're gonna look at what I think I've been waiting for the most from Discmania when I switched over is the new MD5, the Deflector from MVP. An Anvil, I think one I replaced it with originally was the Mutant, and where they all fly, how they fit, and which ones we should keep. Let's check it out. Okay, so on this first shot, I'll start off with the Deflector. It swings left pretty good, but it also wants to angle down towards the ground pretty quickly, and this is only about 250 feet. And so the Mutant, that one wants to do the same thing as the Deflector, but it has significantly less swing from right to left, but it does have just as much downward pull, but it just kind of sits and dies. Whereas the Anvil on this shot was a little put on a little bit of ante, but has enough stability to swing back out and then still catch a little more edge and push. That one pushed to about 270. And then the MD5, this one just felt so good, but it doesn't have as much pull to the ground as the Deflector or the Mutant, and it's a little less stable and has a little less swing to the left than the Anvil so far. And on this next one, you're gonna see the way these swing. And so with the Mutant first, you see it pushes out and pretty quickly on this angle wants to come back down to the left and down. And then the Deflector, that one, same angle, but a little more inside, but you see it does want to fight to the ground. It doesn't even fade all the way off into the road. It still stayed to the right of the curb, so it had some more downward pull than right to left swinging. But the Anvil, that one you see about the same line as the Deflector, does have more swing left, but still almost swung out of bounds. I think it did clip a tree we can't see off camera there. And the MD5, that one on this steep wide angle, it still swings a lot more right to left when it has enough room to. So it doesn't have as much downward pull, but it does have a good amount of right to left swing on that backhand, which is really nice. And then I did this shot where I'm trying to get to the right of, like, you could say this Mando tree and the Mutant, but we can see that even before it hit that tree, it was gonna start to have more downward pull. Like we've mentioned, it may not have had enough right to left skip, whereas the Deflector on that same shot and lower, and on that same shot but lower, had that, and a little more inside, did have that right to left pull, whereas the Mutant doesn't have that because it's not pulling right to left as much. Whereas the Anvil, you see on that nice Hyzer angle, it pushes out, and because of the angle, it pulls away from that tree from right to left pretty quick, but pushes out farther before getting into that part of the flight path. Whereas the MD5, I threw it lower and to the right, and even then, because it's not pulling down and still right to left, it was able to catch edge, and still you see it swing low on the ground. And then I'm trying to get into this bigger full send shot, but with the Mutant, it doesn't want to glide far before, like we've seen, it wants to pull to the ground, which I think has its strengths, and so it just pulls to the ground and dies, which has its spot. Whereas the Deflector, that one, like I said before, has a bit more glide than the Mutant, but I think it pulls to the ground almost as much, but has a bit more right to left swing, so it pushes out further. And so you see the Anvil push out straight and then swing around that tree nicely, but has a big right to left sweeping finish, and so it gets extra distance both on that swing and on the skip. And the MD5 really only has that much swing when it's put on a good Hyzer angle, because on flat, you'll see this shot, it pushes for quite a while and slowly starts to get into that swing. But on a steeper angle, you'll see I'll do the same shot, it swings a lot quicker. So more flat, it won't swing as easily. And then I got into just one full send out in an open field so we can kind of see the flight a bit better with no obstructions. There is a left to right wind pushing back on these shots. And so the Mutant you see pretty quickly even out flat. Again, we see it fight to this downward angle, whereas the Deflector, same idea, it does the same, but you see it has a bit more right to left. But because it does want to fight into this angle about 50-60% of the way through the flight path, the wind pushes it down and it sits. The Anvil, that one pushes out for quite a while, and because it doesn't push like this, angle like this, the top of the disc isn't exposed to the wind as much, so it will push out further before getting pushed down into the wind. And the MD5 pretty much had the same thing on flat. The wind pushed it over right just a little, but not a lot, and because it never really angled too much, it just kind of like faded down and straight. And then we get into these little forehands. This first one's about 230 feet. You'll see the Mutant, same idea. I feel like a new Mutant will push out straight like you'll see with little to no risk of turning over left, so it has a nice sitting finish. The Deflector, on the other hand, you see same idea as the back, small anhyzer to a flat angle, and it still fought back out against the wind a little bit. The Anvil, that one you see like it pushes out for further before going into its fade, so that one went to about 240, 250. So it pushes out further before the fade. And the MD5 you see stays nice and flat, but it doesn't have as much to fight out of an anhyzer, so it needs to be flat. And then again, doesn't swing as much if it's too low to the ground is what I found. And then this final forehand, the Mutant, it'll push right and it doesn't have as much left to right swing, and because it angles like this, the wind just pushes it down and it has a flatter finish. Whereas the Deflector has the same fight down as the Mutant, but it fights to the right significantly more, so it does have more left to right movement and flare. Whereas the Anvil you see pushes straight, has a pretty good finish, and will still have a flare. And the MD5, that one, because it's not moving from left to right quicker, it'll push left a little more, especially if it's annied, and then it'll swing back, which is really nice. And so overall, what I've now found is that the Mutant wants to fight down and more, and left to right or right to left less. The Deflector also has a lot more downward fight or like bite into the ground, but does want to move from left to right more than the Mutant, or right to left, depending on which way you're throwing. The Anvil and the MD5 both have significantly less downward pull, but they do have more left to right, right to left. They have more horizontal swing to them rather than vertical pull. The Anvil is more stable, I found, than at least this Metal Flake MD5. But the MD5 seems like a phenomenal fill-in right above the MD3, and it just looks and feels really, really nice. This Metal Flake, C-Line Metal Flake plastic just feels so nice. And it will go in the bag, but it's not going to remove the Mutant because of the technical or the very specific shots that this allows me to use. So I like them both, and if you have a big enough bag, having both of these is phenomenal. Let me know what you guys think of the new MD5, if you know of anything with the different colors or different stabilities, because I'd love to know that. So thanks for watching.